We have got time for some questions. Sir, why don't you start us off?
Malcolm's my name. One of the things which seems to be missing from this discussion of housework is mowing the lawn, washing the car, cleaning the gutters, doing the edges, etc., etc. Now, I think that needs to be brought into the equation, but I think another thing about that needs to be brought into the equation, and that is I don't think men actually see that as doing work. So you get a double negative in the statistics. That would be my first point. If I can make a second point as well. The other one is, if I can just give you my experience, the relationship of belittling the male's performance is very debilitating. And if you move beyond that, then things will change. But when you're not given the chance, you throw up your hands and you say, why bother?
Can I comment on that? On your first point, the ABS actually includes all of those things that you mentioned in unpaid work. So actually, if you take all that stuff around the house out of the time that they spend per day, you're actually left with maybe 10 minutes. So that is already included in the equation. Work inside and outside the house is included. But your second point is absolutely right. I hear so many men say, you know, I try and do something and then it's never good enough, or I get criticised, and it happens enough times, I just don't do it. So one of the things I'd say two things. First of all, you occasionally meet men who said, oh, they asked me to do something and I did it so badly, so I never got asked again. So we've got to remove the sabotage there. But I think most of the time you just say to women, look, maybe they're in a purple and green tutu and a tank top and the wrong shoes, but as long as they're warm, does it really matter that the kids are dressed in a certain way? Does it really matter that he didn't make the pasta the way you'd like it if it's edible and you're not chucking up your guts afterwards? Just let him do it the way he's doing it. Because honestly, if you were going to start to mow the lawn or do one of those traditional tasks that he did, you'd also want to do it your own way. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to create the space for our partners to do the work, and we need to allow them to do it the way they want to do it, as long as safety and health, is factored into it.
Ma'am.
Oh, hello, thank you. No, my question was going to be about international differences in what's perceived as work, say Norway in shoveling snow versus mowing the lawns. But I want to ask whether it could be genetic, because I'm amazed that my husband looks at our son and complains about him leaving everything everywhere in the house and clothes all over the floor, but he does exactly the same thing and has no idea that he's done it.
Yes, I think it's a case of needing to be seen to be a good role model. And that's why I think that that whole argument about the next generation will be different needs to be put into a context of we really, when we start our own homes, pretty much role model what happened in our own homes. And also there's a role there that I didn't talk about, which is there's another impetus for mothers with sons to really make sure that distribution of work in the home is as equitable as possible, because it's not really just about your relationship with your partner, it's also about making sure that your son will be the right kind of partner that they could possibly be when they grow up. So if you're doing everything for them, I can't tell you how many women with boys and girls in their early 20s who will say to me, why won't my 20-something kid leave home? And I'll say, okay, well, do you do your son's laundry? Yes. Do you? Does he pay board? No. Do you cook for him? Yep. And can he have a girlfriend over? Yep. Well, you're running a hotel with sex, so he's never, ever going to leave. And not only that, when he does leave and marry somebody, he's going to really, he's going to silently accept the same thing. So I think there's a lot to be said for fathers not just complaining about their kids not doing the right thing, but changing their own behaviour as an example.
Thanks very much. And another one over here.
I was just wondering if we could talk about the role of the advertising media in all this. As a young woman, I am constantly disgusted that all the cleaning products, all the cooking advertisements are targeted towards women, and I feel that that's really contributing towards this, difference in the unpaid work that men and women are doing.
Did everyone hear the question? Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, because there's a circular argument, because and I'm in this industry, you know, we provide research for this industry, is people look at the stats and they say, okay, 82% of grocery buyers are women, 82% of people who clean the bathroom are women. Therefore, if we have cleaning products, we're obviously going to target them at women. So there is this sense that they're reinforcing what an already existing stereotype. And sometimes in meetings, you know, with advertising agencies and other people, I say, look, we have to open ourselves to the opportunity that men will change. So shouldn't we start to include them in the equation, particularly in relation to anything to do with childcare or to do with cooking? And there can be quite a resistance to that. Oh, you know, that change is never going to come. We still have to talk about mum. So I think you're absolutely right. Those kinds of images are said to reflect reality, but in many ways they also reinforce reality and occasionally block up the opportunity for change. I think it would be fascinating to do a cleaning ad in the same way they do a beer ad. You know, after the end of a hard day, all you want to do is spray that shower and look at it. And, you know, a whole lot of guys sitting in the bathroom spraying showers together, and it's fantastic. Full strength, low carb. Yeah, I think you could. I think that would be very silly, but I think hopefully we'll get there in our lifetime. Maybe to realise that maybe we should start to market and think about these kinds of products from a man's point of view.
I think Spray and Wipe is already designed for a male audience, the way it's got the instructions there in the title. Spray and Wipe. You know. It's aimed at a male audience. We're not good at reading the manual.
That's right. We should have soups called Open and Heat. Yeah. And that is very straightforward instructions, very important. Yeah.
One over here.
Hello, I enjoyed your talk, thank you. I'm the mother
just nice and loudly.
Mother of two teenage boys. Can you tell me the target hours again for getting them so that I can help the next generation of women?
Well, look, what can I say about that? I suppose it's interesting that you say that. I suppose the other thing that I didn't include in the talk, but what I've been saying in the media related to that, is I actually think even though the hours tell us that the discrepancy still exists, I don't often think it's about trying to find the exact equality, like you did 5 hours this week and I did 5 hours, and then if I'm not going to work beyond the 5 hours. I think that how different couples and how different households divide this up is always going to be quite personal, but it has to feel equal. It has to feel like we're partners in this. There isn't this kind of sense of I'm the one who does everything. I mean, we often get from women in our research this sense that I've got 3 kids, 2 of them go to primary school and 1 of them has a car and a chequebook. You know, in terms of how it's always down to me to kind of do everything. So it's really about that feeling rather than about the exact distribution of labour kind of exactly down the line. So it has a sense that it feels equal. And that might be the case that in the end, because the woman's working 4 days a week or because of whatever reason, she might do a couple of hours more than her partner a week. But as long as they feel like they're sharing the load at some level emotionally, I think that that's enough. So rather than going home to your sons and going, right, you better do this amount of work this week or, you know, you're cut off, it's more a sense of, are we all in this together? And I don't really, in the research that we do as Ipsos McKay report, I rarely get the sense from the women, particularly with younger children, that that's the case.
One over here.
Oh, hello. I have a comment, which was, after 25 years of marriage, I said to my husband, you know, you can do your own ironing, particularly the shirts. When I told my mother, she was absolutely horrified. And she said, no, you've got to be joking, that can't be possibly true. How do you fight this sort of attitude that comes from the older generation?
Sorry, what kind of attitude?
Everyone heard that, didn't they? How do you cope with the mother or the mother-in-law who says that you're pushing this generation of men too fast, really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's difficult because I think that what often happens is this sense of people, of maybe the older generation feeling quite defensive because we know that for various reasons they might have given some stuff up or they might have gotten used to a scenario, and if you're radically changing the way this is, it reflects back on me and the changes that I've made. I think it's one of those things where you smile nicely. I think it's a difficult thing about having to deal with that. But I've never had a lot of sympathy for the whole idea of we did it tough, therefore you must do it tough as well, to justify the fact that we did it tough. That is used as a justification by, post-war immigrants for the reason why we shouldn't let asylum seekers in today. It's used as a justification for women in their 50s who didn't get the baby bonus or maternity leave, about why the baby bonus or maternity leave shouldn't be introduced today. So it's a kind of a resentment politics that I don't get. But I think it might be too big a fight. Maybe you just smile and nod and say, well, we're doing things differently, and trust me, I'm still being a good wife, but I'm doing it under my own steam. It's a difficult thing. I'm really lucky. My mother-in-law...
I think he's doing it under his own steam with the...
Yeah, that's right. I'm really lucky. My mother-in-law was a stay-at-home mum her whole life, and is completely supportive. Sees that I'm completely supportive of my career. Her son is very well fed and looked after. She recognises that life changes and things change. But it is a real difficulty. And you see just as much resistance to the idea that gender roles might change from older women as you see from older men, and occasionally you see older men being more open to the opportunity for change.
One from over here.
Hi, how you going? I'm kind of Gen Y, so I'm kind of the opposite to everybody else here, I guess. Well, just as a general statement, we're
You're
talking
younger than
about
we look,
parents, I live with my Down syndrome uncle, my autistic younger brother, my grandfather, my mother and my father, who are both quite older. So I'm kind of the youngest person or the most able in the house to help out.
And there's two women in the house?
There's two women in the house, Mum and myself. And I tend to find that in our home particularly, Mum is always called for because of her title of Mum.
Yeah.
And do you think that the particulars with the titles Mum and Dad are part of the problem? Because people say, no, ask Mum, as opposed to saying, ask Mum and Dad?
Yeah, it's interesting, there's something about the symbolic power of what a mother is, and it's an emotional anchor, but Mum is the one who knows where the green sock, that I'm looking for is, and Mum's the one who knows when Auntie Edna's birthday is and gets the gift. So it's the default position in terms of the whole dynamic of the house, and it has that kind of emotional significance and emotional role. And I think that the fact that is the case, it often means that it's not just about the men in the house that invest Mum with that kind of power. It's a position of control and privilege that a lot of women don't feel like they want to give up too quickly either, even though they might resent it. They kind of feel I'm the epicentre of everything. So I just think that kind of change from Dad also knowing where the green sock is and Mum knowing is going to take some time, but it's not going to happen. I think what's very clear from the statistics, it's not going to happen unless we actively try and change it, and that the other gender dynamics in other parts of our society, i.e. a woman becoming Prime Minister or more women entering the workforce, can actually leave those dynamics almost unchanged. So until Mum says, ask Dad where the green sock is, and then Dad's forced to know where the green sock is, it's not going to change. And I don't think it also means that we have to stop believing that Mum's important in our life and Mum doesn't play a kind of emotional role. But she shouldn't also have to be the person for whom everything in the house hinges. And we make fun of it, but we also don't question it as much as we should. And you think about something like The Simpsons, Marge Simpson, sometimes I want to think, this woman's going to need to get out of this scenario. Like, she is the most... I can't watch it anymore. She is utterly downtrodden in that sitcom, and we all laugh about it, but after a while I just can't kind of handle it. She's the one who has to do absolutely everything and put up with, again, the fourth child who just happens to have the car and the chequebook. So, yeah, we're a long way away from divesting mum not only from that symbolic power, but from the person who is the omnipotent person for whom everything in the house relies upon. It's too much pressure, frankly, whether you're working or not working.
The guys like The Simpsons because Homer makes even us look there's a question over here.
Rebecca, thanks for your presentation. I thought the presentation would be more about relationship and psychology, so I'm a bit lost. But my question is, as culturally, if you come from overseas, one of the first things you learn from an Australian male is that Australian girls are the worst in the world, no? All this kind of stuff. And it's amazing because that's really true. I'm a Brazilian. And through the talk, I'm a Brazilian, and I've never seen a Brazilian man talk about the Brazilian girls are the worst in the world, or vice versa. So there is a complaining, really, from Australian guys tell to me or to other Brazilian friends, Australian girls are the worst, and vice versa.
So worst in what terms? They're messy or what?
Yeah, no. It's uncomfortable even for me, because if I go to a barbecue, example, all the boys are there and all the girls are here. For me, I get quite upset with that. If I go to a party, as I'm a Brazilian guy, so I have to dance with all their girlfriends. And I get tired.
That must be very, very hard for you.
I get tired. And that's true. I'm a member of a Muslim rowing club, and sometimes I'm not going to this party because I have to dance with 20 girls. And I think, what impressed me is about wow, there's a complaining from both sides here, And South American men we are sexual slaves, so let's go play our game, dance. But there's something in Australian guys that impressed me, that if I compare to my Brazilian friends, I've never seen a loyal, committed, and their mate as an Australian. So it's the strange thing that I think Australia has produced an amazing kind of male that is a very friend, very committed as a friend, and I tell you, might be better than a Latin man. But as a lover or as a relationship, maybe the fame of the Latin man is better. So what I'm asking to you, sorry, it's not a propaganda, but you have all to cope with stereotypes, But Rebecca, what I'm asking to you that, don't you think that even with these negative points over the Australian men, that sorry, I do agree, because I live here now and I can see it. I think Australian men, they are cruel to females. They don't bash them, but they are cruel.
Rebecca.
No. So the question is, I think this culture has produced amazing good mates, amazing good friends. So guys, improve as a husband. So that's what I'm asking to you.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting point. To address your first issue, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a social researcher. So I approach this from the point of view of social research rather than psychology. And I'm certainly, even though some of the things I talked about border on relationship advice, that's not my area of expertise. I think the point you're making, interestingly, about the sex segregation of our society and this sense of, what we talk about, the role of Australian mateship, and what do we think is, amongst men, what do we think is crucial to that, or backing each other up and never letting that person shoulder a burden that you're not prepared to take, and really being a friend. You wonder often when you ask these men, are you a friend to your partner? Like your partner might be struggling with kids or struggling with all the rest of it. Are you a contributor or are you a detractor? So if we kind of think about some of those, I suppose, key qualities in what it is to be a mate, then if we transferred them into the sexual relationship or the relationship of husband and wife, then it would help. But the point you're making about sex segregation in Australian society is one that's made consistently, but perhaps less by South Americans in my experience, but by let's say, Italians or French, where say everybody works a bit more, everybody socialises a little bit better and talks a little bit better. That being said, Italian society is one of the worst societies in terms of distribution of labour in the home, which has got another reason why its birth rate is so low. So it goes some way, but I don't think it explains doesn't help as much as perhaps we think we should help. And I'm sorry, I've got to dance with a lot of Australian women, but I'm sure there's an upside to that.
Can I say, as an Australian man, though, I've never been part of that discussion you described. I've never been part of a discussion where Australian men are saying Australian men are no good. Australian women are no good. I've only been part of discussions where we think Australian women are fabulous.
And what do you think of
although
Australian men?
Although we're not good dancers.
What do men say about men, in your experience?
I think Australian women are very feisty and do a lot of the things, in my experience, a lot of the things you have talked about today. They actually demand that their men rise to the task. I myself have been sitting at the breakfast table eating my porridge and had the wet shower mat placed on top of my head, dripping so that the water trails down my cheek. And if that happens 3 days in a row, it sets up a Pavlovian reaction, whereby even though you're half asleep at the time, you get out of the shower and you dry yourself, and you go to leave the shower with the mat, the wet on the floor, and there's this Pavlovian response where you go, oh. And you feel the wetness and and you turn and you pick it up and you hang it up, and it works.
Yep. No, I have that. My mother used to, when we were past a certain age, if there were dirty dishes, what she would do is take them and neatly wrap our clean clothes in them and put them in the drawer. It's nothing like, I'm going to wear that skirt and say, That happens a couple of times.
Well, you're talking about teenage boys. Another thing is to put the dirty plates in their beds.
Yeah, that's another one.
Tends to get them to put them away in the future. There's another question.
Okay. I enjoyed your talk, Rebecca, and I researched this area as well for my thesis. Mm-hmm. I just have a couple of comments I'd like to make. First, I think focusing on women, letting them get away with it, with housework, I'm concerned that just reproduces a situation where the onus is placed on women to take responsibility for men's behaviour in that sense. And I suppose my point is that while men might sort of retreat from domestic work and not do it if they're belittled or ridiculed or whatever, but you don't see a lot of them really fighting for control over the housework with women. Yep. You don't see them challenging them to do the cleaning or to do a lot of this stuff. And so I suppose what I would like to suggest is that maybe this suggests we really haven't come as far as we think we have. Yes. I mean, if men really wanted to get more involved, they would fight more for it, I think. Yeah. I know that's a controversial point, but I just wanted to raise it, and I'll be interested to hear what you have to say.
No, you're absolutely right. And certainly before doing the work that I've done in the Mackay report, I would have taken a much more, I suppose, I would have taken the view that this is all men's fault, and also the Australian labour market, which we know is a particular kind of scenario which requires us all to work for a long period of time, is the problem. And I actually think you're right. I mean, I think it's there's a frustration there about men not fronting up and not actually, even when women do those, for as many families where the woman does that and you change, there's also men who are resisting change and also having those kinds of attitudes. I suppose what I wanted to do in this talk is see to the extent to which women are contributing to this scenario, to what extent are they contributing? I would never say that it's actually their fault or the onus is upon them because to say the onus is on them to force men to change is exactly like saying the onus upon them to do everything. But I was trying to, I suppose, approach this long discussion, and this has pretty much been a discussion since the early 70s about how we change this to see how women can play a role and a better role and a more active role. But they're certainly not completely to blame for it. I think there's a whole other talk about what men do, that sabotage. But this is a dangerous ideas talk, so I was hoping to find a kind of a new angle. So nothing that you said is what I don't disagree with anything that you said at all. I still think that Australian men are pretty bad, and that part of that is they've got to look inside. Why is it that I don't want to do this? Why is it that I kind of defer and allow somebody else to plan all this for my life? And also, what am I missing out on as well? You asked men, if you see... I also have an issue too with the fact that the ABS lump childcare in with cleaning the toilet. I think that childcare should be considered completely separate from unpaid work around the home. There's a kind of a ethical imperative to be a full contributor in your child's life. So if you see looking after your own child, as often men describe as babysitting, you say, well, you could also describe this as parenting your own child, which should not be seen as the same as doing the dishes. So, yeah, I don't let men off the hook, but what I wanted to do in this talk is really think, especially as somebody who's a committed feminist, to what extent, this is a complicated issue, we can't just say it's all men's fault and it's the labour market's fault. What insight has the research that we've given me into what women are doing with some self-sabotage or so forth as being part of the problem, but certainly not the whole problem at all.
Now, we've probably got time for two last questions. Sir?
Yeah, I agree. It's all women's fault. My name's Mark. I'm actually running a sex hotel for my daughter at the moment.
Oh, right.
and she's got 3 older brothers, and we never did that for them. So maybe something's changing. Clearly, the onus is on men to do more or a fair share or an equal share or something. But I think there's also an issue that it's not just men don't do enough, maybe women do too much. They have pretty high standards and they want it done now. Whereas, I might get home from a hard day's work and I don't really care about the mess. I'd rather just sit down and have a chat to her. But no, there's work to be done.
So different standards, is that a fair excuse?
I think there is some truth in that. There's this idea of maybe it's more important to sit down to a nice meal that everybody just threw together within 20 minutes rather than a full, 4-course meal or whatever. So there is this sense of potentially there's a sense of us trying to meet expectations that are unrealistic given all the other things that we need to do. But again, you wouldn't want that to be a cop-out for people not to do the work as well. So there is a kind of basic level of cleanliness and hygiene that everybody should be involved in, and lowering standards to perhaps lowering standards too low, lowering standards too low is not the alternative. Don't do it is sometimes a bit of a cop out. But I get what you're trying to say. Working out what's the real priority about. It's Thursday night. We've got an hour. Is the priority to alphabetise the cereal boxes, or is it a priority to sit there and, talk and be together?
And we're going to pick up those undies later, we really are.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a little bit of the pots are soaking. How many days do they need to soak for? A couple of hours, or after 5 days, they're pretty much done and they need to be done. So, yeah, it's a bit of a slippery slope.
You may laugh, but my alphabetised spice drawer is a thing.
Oh, no, that's important.
A thing of beauty. Well, I think one last question and then we're out of time.
Hi, I'm 20 years old and I'm actually from the United States, so this isn't just an Australian issue. Mm-hmm. But
you see?
Yeah.
He'll come over to your country and dance with all your friends too, I'm sure.
I find myself in a house of, it's just my father and I now. Yeah. And I find that since about 14, I've become the mother of a 50-year-old retiree. Where since I was about 14, I've been doing all of the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and everything like that. And I was just, it's interesting because he just assumes that that's what should be happening. Yeah. And I was wondering if it's at all possible for a younger generation to influence an older generation without us getting grounded?
Yeah. That's a really good question and connects up to the lady's question there about the older generation. Again, this is a relationship advice which I wouldn't want to give to you because I wouldn't know how to handle that personally. But, how old are you?
I'm 20.
You're 20?
Yeah.
He could ground you at 20?
I live in his house.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's basically running a sex hotel for her father.
That's right.
Essentially, yes.
Is there anything he's good at or likes doing?
He was a mechanic for many years, but he's got health issues that keep him from doing that now.
Right. Yeah, health issues. That's really tough. I suppose one of the things that's interesting, when we look at what has actually changed over the last 30 years in terms of what men are doing more of, it really has been in the area of childcare and to some extent cooking. And this is one of the great upsides of the current interest in food and MasterChef. It actually changes men's attitudes to cooking. Oh, this might not be a chore. This might be something that people value and can help me get chicks, then sometimes you often think, well, maybe if there's something that he likes to do or sees having some other kind of benefit, it's a way of saying, hey, why don't you try this out? So, look, it's a difficult... I actually don't want to answer the question because I don't know what you could possibly do, because if you're doing everything for him, I suppose probably the only solution, if you can't talk to him about it or he's resistant to it, is to move out, which is easily said and done.
Yeah, I've been here for about a month now, and he called me 2 weeks ago and went, how do you use the washer? I went, you bought it 20 years ago. Thank you.
Tough, very tough.
Do you remember on Sylvania Waters years ago, the first reality television show ever, there was this fantastic shot of the kitchen and the young sort of 24-year-old son of the family, and he was captured, the mother was out, and I think his wife was out too, and he was trying to make a cup of tea with a tea bag and didn't know how to do it. All right. Fantastic. We're out of time, but thank you very much for coming. It's been fantastic. Rebecca is going to be outside, and you can come and have a chat, or she'll sign one of her books for you. If you want to achieve balance, my book will be there as well, about how fabulous men
Which is called Why Men Are Necessary, which I think is a very good...
And if you just want some dancing instruction, I'm sure we can arrange that.
That's right.
Thank you very much for coming.